Welcome back to Yang Daily. I'll be your host, Alex Cheney, bringing you all the Yang news you need to live your life right. Sorry we're late again. I had it ready this morning, but we had renovation work going on, so it was too noisy to record. But we've got a huge episode today, a lot of really exciting items, definitely an important one, so strap in, because here we go. A large portion of this episode, much as I try to avoid it, will have to be devoted to Trump, specifically to an interview between Fox News Sunday's Chris Wallace and Trump that recently took place. The reason for that is that Wallace actually fact-checked the president on a number of important lies Trump has been feeding to the public regularly. I never thought it would be coming from Fox, but I'm very pleased to see it. Trump clearly considered them friendly enough to allow the interview, which he won't do with any news agency that's been critical of him. I doubt Fox will be coming back, considering how brutally Chris picked him apart, and especially after openly chuckling at times when Trump attempted and failed to find evidence for his lies. The first zinger wasn't so much a fact check as just a funny moment. Wallace brought up Trump's disparaging comments about the state of Biden's mental faculties. Trump said he wouldn't call Biden senile, but then proceeded to say that he didn't think Biden even knew he was alive. He then repeated a reference he's been fond of recently, saying that he, Trump that is, aced a cognitive test. Wallace mentioned he had also taken the same test after hearing Trump talk about it. Trump asked him how he did. Wallace responds, "Well, it's not the hardest test. They have a picture of an elephant and ask you what it is." Trump then gets flustered and says those are the easy questions, but the last 5 questions are, quote, "very hard," end quote. So here's those last 5 questions. Repeating 5 words from memory after 5 minutes, I can maybe see someone having trouble with. The rest, we've got repeating a short sentence that is read to you, coming up with more than 12 words that start with F in a minute, saying what 2 simple words have in common, like banana and orange are both fruit, and stating the date and where you are. Not anything adults of sound mind should struggle with. That's the point of the test, after all. A sitting president referring to it as very hard is very concerning to me. Wallace also called Trump's lie on defunding the police. Trump has repeatedly made the false claim that Biden supports defunding police because Trump depends on wedge issues to enrage his followers. But Wallace explicitly stated that Biden is not for defunding the police. Trump goes on to lie that Biden signed a charter with Bernie that talks specifically about defunding and abolishing police. Wallace denies this. Trump calls for documents to be brought out to prove he's correct. When the documents arrive, there is no evidence to support Trump's claim whatsoever. Wallace clarifies afterward that they combed through the entire charter and it contains 0 mentions of defunding or abolishing police. In fact, Biden has explicitly called for increasing funding to police, for departments meeting standards, and redirecting funding within the police budget. Trump also doubled down on his lies around when the pandemic will end. Wallace quoted his classics, saying it's only 1 person from China and it's going to be fine, saying that there are 15 cases and it'll be close to 0 in 2 days, saying that the virus will just disappear like magic one day. Trump's response was, quote, "I'll be right eventually. You know, I said it's going to disappear and I'll say it again," end quote. In other words, he's saying that he has been and will continue to say it's almost over, regardless of reality. He'll eventually be right in the same way a crazy person saying the world is going to end will eventually be right at some point, even if that point is millions of years from now. Importantly, Wallace also called out Trump's lies on the mortality rate and infection rate. Trump has been constantly saying that the U.S. has the lowest mortality rate in the world, which is patently false. The U.S. is the 7th highest mortality rate in the world. Trump refused to acknowledge this in the interview. He again called for evidence. Someone brought out some papers. Trump waved one of them and said, "Best mortality rate." Fox later posted the graphs being used by the White House and showed that they are only looking at the worst mortality rates in the world. And even on that graph, it is clear that many countries have lower mortality rates than the U.S., making Trump's claim baldly false even by his own data. Yet he continues to lie outright to the American people. On infection rates, he has been likewise spreading the lie that the cases are only up due to increased testing. Wallace flatly punctured this as well, pointing out that testing has increased 37% while cases have increased 194%, more than 5 times as much as the testing. He also pointed out the positivity rate has risen. Trump had no response for this and quickly pivoted to saying most people will survive. Equally frightening was Trump's answer regarding the upcoming election. When asked directly if he would accept the outcome of the presidential election, Trump refused to say that he would abide by the democratic process, instead saying, quote, "I'll have to see," end quote. Add this latest authoritarian red flag to him saying the president's authority is total, that he might be in office for more than 2 terms, and that he is not subject to the law, his habit of retribution against anyone who criticizes him, and so on. There can be no more clear hallmarks of a dictator than refusing to step down when voted out, refusing to be subject to the law, and refusing any limits on one's power. That is why they are all explicitly addressed in the Constitution, and why they should alarm the heck out of any patriot. I honestly can't thank Chris Wallace enough for finally subjecting the president to honest journalism and fact-checking. Fox has certainly been complicit for the most part, and they're probably only starting to abandon a sinking ship, but I'll take any help we can get in de-radicalizing the public. Unfortunately, most Trump supporters have proven immune to the facts, but perhaps seeing this interview will show a few that they are being straight up lied to on a daily basis by Trump, and not on frivolous details, but on life and death issues. If you know any such, please suggest they watch this interview. Maybe just tell them it's a really good interview with Trump and don't mention why. But there's more big news, which is scary in its own way, but also extremely awesome. OpenAI's GPT version 3 has been released, which is the newest iteration of a robust, text-based artificial intelligence capable of many different tasks. The degree of competence in this new AI makes it, in my opinion, easily the most potent sign of the fourth industrial revolution yet. Examples of the AI's performance are floating all around the net. I'll share just a few here to convey the scope and depth of it. First, we have translation of plain English into legalese. Given the input, quote, "Everyone I'm suing worked together," end quote, the AI outputs, quote, "Plaintiff alleges on information and belief that defendants, and all of them, are, and at all times herein mentioned were, the agents and servants of each other, and in doing the things hereinafter alleged, were acting within the scope of such agency and service," end quote. Or, given the prompt, quote, "My landlord told me he didn't want black people living in the complex," end quote, it translates to, quote, "Plaintiff is informed and believes and thereon alleges that the defendant, by and through his agents and servants, has engaged in a pattern and practice of refusing to rent and otherwise make available dwelling units to black persons because of their race or color," end quote. That is entirely cogent and yet incomprehensible to the layperson. In other words, perfect legalese. In another example, a programmer shows how it can take plain English descriptions of what is desired for a web page and create it from JavaScript, such as inputting, quote, "a button for every color of the rainbow," end quote, or, quote, "a table of the richest countries in the world by name and GDP," end quote, and it actually does it. Far less accurately in that case, but it still nails it shockingly often. Then we get to the arts. Asked to craft a poem, one it came up with is the following, quote, "An Uber poem. Poet, Uber poet," they whisper, quietly, softly, eerily, sometimes, sometimes not, someday perhaps. If you come, if you work, if you try, you too could write like them. If you get up early enough, they whisper. If you can read the entrails of chickens with deft and sly fingertips, they whisper. If you can read omens and portents, if you can divine fate and calamity with clarity, with mastery, they whisper. If you can write with passion, with lucidity, with lyrical fierceness, they whisper. If you write as if all the tales of old are passing through your fingers, making their mark upon your flesh, upon your soul, they whisper. We shall call you an Uber poem. That's all very well, you say, but what is it that I must do? What are they exactly? What is their composition? Ah, that is not to be revealed. That is the mystery. But don't you worry. Don't you fret. You might one day reach the highest plateau, this exalted state of achievement, of honor. And on that day, you shall bask in the glory of greatness. When will that be? When will I become Uber, you ask? When you can look into the mirror and see a poem looking back at you. When you can hear music in the play of silence. when you can create a writing that leaves people stunned, when you can laugh and weep as you think and breathe and eat and sleep, when you can dream with the quill in your finger, then perhaps you will be a poet, an uber poet. End quote. That's about as good as I've ever heard from a human poet. I mean, write as if all the tales of old are passing through your fingers, making their mark upon your flesh, upon your soul. Damn, dude, that's good. Last example is someone having it finish an essay they were writing on how to run effective board meetings. The user says, quote, and it wrote up a 3-step process on how to recruit board members that I should honestly now put into my damn essay. I'm losing my mind, end quote. I won't read the entire thing, but here's a bit of the AI written essay. Quote, finally, companies I've seen that have benefited most from having a strong board have been startups where the board seats aren't on a rotation, meaning board members stick around for a couple of years, versus many other startups which only have directors that either on a 1-year or 2-year rotation. When you have a relatively stable board over a period of years, it's far easier for the company to build long-term trust. It allows for the board members to have more impact, to be truly engaged, and to help you avoid some of the short-term hiccups and pitfalls that come from having a board that is constantly changing. End quote. Honestly, my mind is blown. Certainly this is nowhere near general intelligence, but it's also far beyond anything that I thought we'd be capable of for years yet. As it is right now, this could potentially replace a lot of human labor, as well as create a great deal of incredible written word art. Just as with the pandemic, the need for reimagining our economy continues to outpace what even Yang was saying. FYI, OpenAI is a company which was started in part by Elon Musk to direct the inevitable development of AI toward benign ends. It is part of Musk's larger investment in AI, including development of self-driving cars at Tesla, and his burgeoning company, Neuralink, which seeks to develop a human-AI interface via brain implants so that eventual general intelligence AI and humans can evolve together in symbiosis rather than come to an inevitable conflict, which humans would almost certainly lose. In addition, Verizon just announced that they have accelerated their plans for automation in response to the pandemic and will soon be introducing a new AI voice system to support customer service calls at their call centers, one of the biggest call center networks in the world. Following the breaking of the story about federal kidnappings in Oregon, everyone and their mother has suddenly come out to sue the federal government for the infringement of constitutional rights and to change the laws to prevent it. Oregon Attorney General Ellen Rosenblum is filing a lawsuit in federal court tonight seeking a temporary restraining order barring the Department of Homeland Security and other federal law enforcement agencies from seizing and detaining Portland protesters without probable cause. If a judge grants Rosenblum the injunction, it would limit the authority of federal police to make street arrests without meeting the typical standards held to by police, probable cause that a crime is being committed. She also announced that the Oregon Department of Justice and the Multnomah County District Attorney would open a criminal investigation into the July 11th injury of Donovan LaBella, whom a U.S. Marshal shot in the face. The ACLU as well has sued the DHS and U.S. Marshal Service, which have deployed federal agents to Portland. The lawsuit seeks to block federal law enforcement from dispersing, arresting, threatening to arrest, or using physical force against journalists and legal observers. Oregon Senator Merkley has also introduced an amendment to the defense bill to bar the paramilitary federal forces from violating people's rights, basically requiring them to follow all the rules that normal police would in arresting civilians: use a marked vehicle, identify yourself, provide reason for arrest, operate only in your jurisdiction, etc. Despite all of this, when asked about calls for an investigation into DHS police tactics in Portland, Acting Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security Ken Cuccinelli told NPR that not only are they not going to stop the kidnappings and abuse of force, they want to take the tactics nationwide. Quote, with as much lawbreaking as is going on, we are seeking to prosecute as many people as are breaking the law as it relates to federal jurisdiction. That's not always happening with respect to local jurisdiction and local offenses. But this is a posture we intend to continue, not just in Portland, but in any of the faculties that we're responsible for around the country, end quote. Put plainly, they will not be satisfied until protesters across the entire country are being terrorized by secret police. It is for this reason that many officials in other states have already signed on as co-sponsors to the Defense Bill Amendment. Moving on, do you remember the Yahoo data breach settlement that we talked about? Well, today is the last day to file a claim. DDP is saying that anyone who had a Yahoo email account from 2012 to 2016 could qualify, and they have set up a little guide to walk you through the process of filing, including signing up for a free credit monitoring service so that you are eligible for a cash reward. I did it myself, and the entire thing, form and credit monitoring, only took about 10 minutes for a potential payout of hundreds of dollars. Just follow the link below or go to ddpforall.com to get started. At the bottom of the form, they will ask if you lost time to the data breach. You are eligible for up to $125 for 5 hours of lost time without documentation. So all you have to do is say you spent time changing your passwords or messing with the credit monitoring and researching the breach and whatnot. Despite specifically saying you didn't have to provide documentation, the form forced me to submit a document, so I just uploaded a screenshot of the part of the form where it said it wasn't required. Finally, Reverend Wendy Hamilton has announced that she is considering a run for Congress in 2022. Wendy has been a pillar of the Yang Gang, and her aptitude for public speaking, combined with her passion and respect in the community, as well as her adoption of Yang's excellent policy platform, seems a strong argument for her chances. If you'd be willing to support Wendy, visit the Twitter thread below or message her privately and let her know that you're with her. And that'll do it for today's Yang Daily. Watch, bookmark, and share the Wallace interview. Check out GPT-3. Thank Rosenblum, the ACLU, and Merkley for defending the Constitution. Give Wendy your encouragement to run. File your Yahoo claim. Help recruit other organizations to the cause and get everyone to sign the UBI petitions. Flood Congress and Trump with calls, tweets, and letters using the ResistBot or Income Movement easy contacts below. If you need financial help, consult Humanity Forward, the Income Movement Aid Database, United Way, or the H3 podcast thread. And don't forget to Yang Daily.